out today. I have to say in my defense that it's always an uncertainty about how many people are going to show up. It just is. And it drives my wife crazy because she does the food. And she says, how many are coming, Craig? And I say, I don't know. And for those of you who understand the pressures of preparation, you know that that's an inadequate answer. And so I say, I don't know. And so she forces me to give her a number. And I say, oh, I think we're expecting 200. And then she will say, Craig, are we still expecting 200? And then I say, well, no, I think we're expecting 300. And that, then the next time I'll tell her we're expecting 200 again. But the most we've ever done, and this pushed her to the limit. Good soul that she is, it pushed her to the limit, is that over a 2-day period of time, we fed 4,000 people. What we did is that, and we should have done it this time as well, is we put multiple tents on the tennis court, and we held it down there, and we held it over a 2-day period. But my wife fed 4,000 people over that period of time. But for a family of 11 with lots of grandkids, that's really a Sunday afternoon dinner. Our family is older, so they've all kind of graduated and moved out, and my wife has no idea how to cook for 2 or 3. She basically feeds the neighborhood on the leftovers because she has not been able to scale down what it is to cook for 2 or 3. So, but she's a trooper. I hope you've all met her. She to be quite frank. People come up to me and they say, oh, Craig, you know, we appreciate you doing this and doing that. And really the workhorse of our organization is my wife. And I just want to acknowledge her. What's that? Kathy. Also, you met perhaps some of my children in there. It's basically my children. That's the nice thing about having 11 children, is that they're like a little army. And I discovered this when they were little, is that we could do so many things. They would only be 4 and 5, but because there were so many of them, it was like, wow, we can do anything, guys. And as they graduated out of the house, I've lost my army, and it's a little disconcerting. And so I appreciate my children, my daughters especially, also my sons who have participated in this event. Also, just in terms of recognition, I've got John Wright, who John and I. Of the audio, visual, and the presentations that are going to take place. In John's defense is that, of course, the house is Wi-Fi, and we're just not getting the strong reception that we had expected out here. Last time we were okay, but this time that reception seems a little bit indifferent at best. And so that hopefully we'll be able to do the presentation. For those of you that are wondering what the agenda will be, is that we're going to talk about the business, certainly in general, and we're going to talk about specifically vitality. How many of you have engaged in vitality? Okay. It is a wonderful thing, vitality. And the reason why it has been so impactful, at least for me, is that to a certain extent, it's been a surprise. I don't know how you felt about it, but I can tell you that it surprised me as we moved towards the opening of Vitality. It surprised me the energy that started to be engendered by its advent. And that it is really quite an impressive thing when you think of what occurs in the company, and that Nuskin has been able to rebuild itself, to regenerate itself over and over and over again. And really that's one of the hallmarks of Nuskin. I was talking to a distributor, John and I actually were talking to a distributor in a company that has, over the last 10 years, has become very big. It has gone from 0 to about $1 billion. And this is a top distributor. He works with the corporation. It's not nuskin, but he works with the corporation. And in that conversation that I had with him, he says that that corporation focuses on what nuskin is doing. They go to school on what nuskin is doing. And that there's a reason for that. Is that nuskin, over the course of its 25 years, has been able to rebuild itself because it has been experimental, it has been creative, and in truth, that is what it takes for a company to move forward in an environment like we face here in the United States today. I've been in direct sales now for 30 years, almost 30 years, and I have seen the industry transform itself several times. And the industry is transforming itself right now once again. And the reason is that it's responding to the changes in our marketplace. We're all very much aware of what is occurring out there in the world of economics. I mean, we're all been touched by it. There's very few people who have been able to skate through the last 2 years without feeling the impact of the financial crisis that descended on the United States 2 years ago. And as a consequence, the consumer market is not like it was just 2 years ago. And what we're seeing here with Vitality is a product that's coming in and it's meeting the consumer demand, in part because the pricing is situated to be able to move that product in terms of not just wholesale consumption, but also people who buy it as a retail product. And that what we're seeing, of course, is the beginning of the penetration of that market. We're at the very beginning of that. And that's what good companies do. I was reading Harvard Business Review, and they were going through a survey of what corporations in the United States value in those people that they're hiring right now. And number one on the attributes of those new hires, number one was creativity. Is that they're looking for creative people who will be able to help them find their way through the new world that exists out there. And that is one of the assurances that we have with nuskin. Nuskin has always creatively engaged the marketplace. And as a response to that, it has allowed a platform to be built for the distributors as they've expanded worldwide and as they have gone into different nations and they've penetrated different markets to have an opportunity. Because they are creatively engaged in business. And that is highly valued in the world today. And nuskin is recognized for that. I was reading an article, actually it was a biography on Steve Jobs. And that Steve Jobs, of course, is an icon in the world of business. I mean, he's one of those people, you mention his name, and you just assume that everybody in the room knows something about Steve Jobs. And that, of course, Apple is no longer Apple Computer. Apple is now on the verge of being the most highly valued company in the world. And that you look of what's taken place in Apple over the course of the last 15 years, there are lessons to be learned in that history. Is that Apple, of course, Apple Computer, forced Steve Jobs out of the corporation. And he came back in, I believe it was 1996. The stock price for Apple at the time was $17 a share. For those of you who are looking at the stock price for Apple now, what is it?
Close to 3.
Yeah, it has been flirting with 3. It's been up to 292 just recently. This morning it was 286. But over the course of Steve Jobs' return to Apple Computer, the stock price has gone to 17 and has gone up to close to $300 a share. And now Apple is judged to be one of the most valuable companies in the world. What you also see, of course, is that what he did is that he laid a platform that allowed Apple to go into a direction that was new and distinct. They did away with Apple computing, and they became Apple. And the reason, of course, is that they went in and they created the iPod. Something that was new and different. There were other people, of course, in that space, recorded portable music. Sony had dominated that space for 20 years. They had a good portion of Sony was based on portable music. And Apple came in with the iPod, and it disenfranchised Sony. And it started, of course, a line of successes with the iPod, then the iPhone, and then the iPad. And that they have revolutionized their company because of the creative engagement in terms of penetrating a market that wasn't theirs to begin with. Vitality represents the same time of game-changing advance. And the reason is that because of the ageLOC technology, it is doing things not on the basis of cosmetic value. It's doing things on the basis of scientifically supported genetic results. And that is different than what has gone on before. And it places us in an ideal situation to move forward in the future. Other people see this change. The largest consumer products company in the world is Procter & Gamble. And Procter & Gamble has made a huge bet that this is the way the world is going to work. And that we're in fairly exclusive company in terms of actually having the research ability to participate in this arena. And that it opens up new markets for us because it's a different approach. Steve Jobs, he bet the farm on the iPod. And that he didn't know, they did not know whether it would be a success or not. And so that they threw lots of money into it. It was a new direction. They could succeed, they could fail. But it is interesting in his story when he knew that it was going to be a success. And he was on the streets of Manhattan, and he was walking down the street, and he saw a couple people walk with their earbuds in their ear with the white wire, and that he knew that that was the iPod. And he said to himself, it's happening. It's happening. He had seen it before, and so he recognized the elements to where he saw that he was going to take a position in that market that would allow him to be successful. And that is one of the things that is occurring right now with Vitality. When approximately 2 months ago, I began to get phone calls of people who have been relatively indifferent through the summer. They had gone off and enjoyed themselves, and that's great. But in August, I began to get phone calls about people who were highly excited about the advent of Vitality. It was going to open up, the product was going to be dispensed in September. And so as we got into September, I was very curious in terms of, as the volume that was being purchased, it was going to be put onto our V&G, I was curious how much volume would accumulate in my 6 levels that I'm paid on. How much volume would accumulate in that initial month? I knew that it was going to be significant. But it, over the course of that 30-day period of time, $650,000 additional dollars came into my volume, which means that going to my check, it increased my check by over $30,000. Now, I like that. I like that a lot. But it's one of those things that you say, okay, all right, this is pretty exciting. But it's not one of those things where you say, all right, we're changing directions here. Because you introduce new products as a corporation, people buy those products in exploration, and so that you see volumes rise when the company puts forward a product as the distributors examine that product and make a judgment on whether it's sellable. What was truly an aha moment for me, that brought me to that point where I said to myself, it's happening, is that when I saw the numbers for my sponsorship rate. Is that my sponsorship went up by over 50% from month to month. And it's that. It wasn't the volume number specifically. It was the fact that the volume was being coupled to increased numbers of salespeople, and that is what we saw in September. Not volume alone, but additional sponsorship. And not marginally increased sponsorship, but significant additional sponsorship. You just don't see 50% rises in sponsorship very often. You can see significant increases in revenue, but sponsorship takes longer to make happen.